because you have that, you're trying to figure out, am I a part of that? Am I a part of the history, or am I a part of healing it? And both of you, when you put your needs, the other person's needs before how you feel, you will do, I'm telling you right times, 9 times out of 10, your fights will be a good fight, not a bad fight. Welcome back to season 2 on the 2=1 Marriage Podcast with Jimmy and Irene Rollins. We are equally crazy
and equally committed.
And we are helping couples, coming alongside couples to really figure out their marriage equation, one of love, laughter, and longevity, and for a marriage made one. And this season has been my favorite, although the second. It's been my favorite on how to have a good fight. And the idea of this is fighting in your marriage is okay if you're fighting for your marriage.
That's right.
But fighting in your marriage without fighting for your marriage is really a recipe for disaster. And we've had a lot of fights.
We've had a lot of fights.
Not so much these days, but.
Yeah, because I think we have disagreements, we have conflict. It's just different. We handle it so different.
Do you want to introduce our guests?
Yes. So we have some amazing guests with us today. I'm going to let them share a little bit more about themselves, but John and Annabelle Ainley, and we absolutely love this couple.
Yes, we do.
They are local to us in West Palm Beach, Florida.
Yes.
They have been married a little over a year. We got to celebrate your 1-year anniversary with you guys. They were traveling with us when we were doing some marriage ministry, but you guys are such an incredible couple. Tell us how you met first and like whatever else you want to share.
Before that, though.
What?
I know what all of our listeners are thinking, those who are watching. How in the world did Annabelle get someone as handsome as John?
That's right.
My God.
Right?
That's right.
Can you clear the
Is that
air?
what you're thinking, John?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm into personality. What can I say?
Well, go ahead and tell us about you guys.
rude.
Tell us about y'all.
Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, thank you guys for having us on. This really is such an honor. And our marriage is just so much better just from knowing you guys.
Wow.
We met actually at church, met our spouse in the house. John was on staff at our church. He was the youth pastor. I was in college and felt like the Lord was asking me to start volunteering in student ministry.
Wow.
And so I did. And John.
Yeah, I remember I was sitting there, and me and another one of my close friends was on staff with me, and I got a voicemail from her, and I immediately heard, I'm like, oh, that voice is hot. Like that's a British accent.
My accent was a lot stronger then.
Yeah, it was. And so being the good youth pastor that I was, making sure that we had, good quality candidates coming in and investing in the next generation, I had to Instagram stalk her. And
absolutely.
And as soon as I saw her, I said, she's what we need in our youth ministry.
She was called. She was called.
Yeah. She was called to the students, but mostly to me.
I get that.
And so actually we ended up met her at church, kind of went through the whole background check, and then I went ahead and then the next day I immediately called my boss, and I was like, look, I need to talk to you about something. And I sat him down in his office, or it was the other way around, and I was just like, okay, what's the policy for dating volunteers? Because I'm either going to approve her to volunteer or not, depending on what you say. Because I'm going after this woman. And a few months later, we were dating, and then here we are now.
Wow.
Married a year, and thankful again for having us and for the ways that you all have poured into us. It's been such a blessing.
You all have been married a little over a year. John and I play golf together.
I love golf.
You love golf?
I said a lot of golf.
A lot of golf. We do play a lot of golf. I will just go ahead and say he wins regularly, and but that's when that happens. You just yield to, he's training me. You know what I mean? And he's a lot younger. And I have a lot of excuses, but we won't talk about that. We'll talk about how to have a good fight on the golf course. But what we do know is that fights happen in marriage. And a lot of young couples feel as if, and have this ideology as if you're fighting, something bad is going on. And so what was your fight origin, like growing up in your homes? If you saw a fight, or, like your mom and dad get in a fight, or a couple get in a fight, or like if you can tell us, like, what was it like growing up in your home?
Yeah, so for me, I never saw my parents fight.
Wow.
Not once. I'm sure they did fight, but I think it was very much English people are kind of stereotyped that we don't talk about feelings or emotions.
Wow.
And I think in my family that kind of was true. So I never saw my parents fight, not saying that they didn't. I think maybe they were trying to protect us from seeing that. Maybe they didn't fight. I'm not really sure. The first fight I saw my parents have was actually when my dad left.
Wow.
So when he was saying, hey, we are done. So
Wow.
yeah, I had no idea what a healthy fight looks like. Obviously I saw what an unhealthy fight looks like,
Yeah.
but the lack of fighting, I'm the one doing it now. The lack of fighting is what kind of destroyed our family. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I understand. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was jumping straight in. Sorry.
Right? No, hey, let's go. We're
Oh, that's great. Exactly.
Absolutely.
We got to know the backstory.
Yeah, and I come from a family of fighters, and so I think my parents have done a really cool job of like they've let us see and when I say we, it's my brother and sister as well. They've let us see the low points of marriage, but then also the high points, and I think being able to watch them fight, which not always fighting fair. I think there were times where they would be the first to tell you like, oh, this is not the way you should do it. And my dad's pulled me aside several times and been like, hey, the way I treated your mom there, not the right way to do it.
Wow.
And I think that's really impacted me. But I think getting to see kind of fighting, not necessarily all the time, but getting to see it pretty consistently. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily scared of fighting, but I think there is
I am scared of fighting.
Yeah.
There's definitely an art form to fighting.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So I can see how both of you, your backgrounds, your family of origin impacted the way you view arguing now.
Yeah,
Can you
absolutely.
see it in the way you relate? Like, does something come to your mind where you're like, had a light bulb moment, you're like, oh my gosh, I don't like arguing with John because of the past? Like, what does that look like in your disagreements, like the baggage you're bringing into the marriage?
Yeah, I think part of it is I have a really hard time even acknowledging to myself what I'm feeling. So sometimes I'm unintentionally stuffing. So it isn't like I'm frustrated with John and think, oh, it's too much to bring up, I won't, I'll just bring it back down. Like, I don't even have that awareness. My mind just kind of does it for me.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure how that works, but I think it is just from that upbringing of, hey, we don't really talk about stuff. And so when it comes to John and I fighting, it's one of those things where I absolutely hate it in the moment. But afterwards, I just feel so much closer to him, and I feel just so empowered because seeing my parents fight and it end, their marriage end completely, it's just really empowering to see us fight and then be closer afterwards.
It's great. It's great.
Yeah. And I think for me, I think I go through sometimes what I'd call like emotional mathematics, where I'll kind of calculate in my head of, okay, here's this problem. I know if I bring this up that even though in my head I'm like, this isn't really a big deal, but I just want to talk about it. Whereas I know if I bring it up because of her background, she's going to kind of think it's a bigger thing than I think it is.
Yeah.
And so it's almost this level of once it reaches a certain standard of like, oh, this is bad, then it's like, okay, now I feel like I should bring this up. But if it's a smaller thing, I'm like, let's just avoid it altogether. Because that's going to be
Let me say
the
one
simpler
thing
thing.
Go ahead.
before you take it. What I'm noticing and hearing is you are opposites. Complete opposites. Isn't it interesting how it really is true that opposites attract?
Yeah.
Right? So what is interesting, it's scientifically proven that we are drawn to the opposite, right, type of person. When we're out looking for a mate, we are looking to fulfill something that we did not get in our childhood.
Yeah.
So when we start looking at these differences that drew us to our spouse in the first place, but then later on we start to despise it because we're like, it gets on our nerves, it rubs us the wrong way. But it's the very thing God brought us together for balance, brought us together for healing. We naturally are going to look for someone who is going to redeem what we lost in our upbringing.
Wow.
Isn't that something?
That's powerful.
So that's a
Yeah.
beautiful way to look at your differences.
You're so smart. Like you're like that. Was
Like I
just
look
so
at them and I'm
sexy,
like,
though.
look at how God brought them
I know.
together.
I know.
Anyway.
I want to joke, but she wants to stay serious. But anyway, John, I have a question for you. Like, as far as like on a scale of 1 to 5, when we talk about like the volume of fighting that you saw, like if 5 is the, on high and 1 is like, it was kind of soft, like what would the volume you would characterize growing up? This is the volume I heard in my house.
Yeah, I'd probably say like right in the middle, right there to 3.
Okay. So you've seen some 5s? You've seen some
the occasional 5, but the 5 would be rare.
Got you.
But 3 kind of right there in that middle spot.
Okay. And Annabelle, how would you characterize if you were to put John on the scale and say like from a scale to 1 to 5, 5 being a loud volume, 1 being a very silent volume, if you guys are getting into a fight that, there's a disagreement, where is he at in the volume?
Oh, I would say like a 1 or 2. He's very calm. I think because he's scared of how I'm going to react. So he knows he has to come in very calm.
Got you. So what I'm hearing is that like the emotions, you're caring for her by the way you are deciding what you're going to talk about. Even our talks when we're on the golf course, you're like, hey, here's a level 2 problem, and we talk about levels. How should I handle this? Which he does that because he's caring for your childhood. And we've talked about that. Like I've asked him, so what was fighting like? So you saying that these opposites attract, I want you guys to know that you have the equation for a healthy fight. You have the equation for a healthy marriage. Fighting is not bad. You guys will care for one another in the midst of a fight to fight for your marriage, not just fight in your marriage. And so knowing that history allows us to hold each other's humanity. When we have history and you say, yes, the fight that I saw, the only fight that I saw ended my parents' marriage. It's not wrong for you to have an aversion to fighting.
Yeah.
It's just not healthy.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's not wrong for John to get loud or frustrated. It's just not healthy. Because what happens is one thing that you do have in common is both of you are stuffing to a degree.
Yeah.
So you're stuffing because you don't want to see a fight. He's stuffing because he don't want to hurt you. Right? And so, but we're going to talk about some of the fights and how we get into this. But what we want to do is we're going to walk you guys through. We're going to pick an issue. We've already prepared you this. Like when we're talking about issues, we got level 1 issues. Like, I can get over that easy. We got a level 5 issue. We're not going to deal with level 5 issue.
Nope.
We're going to stay about a level 3 issue. But it was so funny that when you all walked in the studio today, Annabelle had on her face, y'all, like, we know them.
Yes.
So we could both see that they just fought, like
just
on
had
the
an
way here.
argument.
And I
Bless her heart.
probably would say it was a level 1 or 2 issue. Like if you were to think about it.
A 2, because Annabelle normally she can take a lot.
Absolutely. But here's what I want to say. Everyone who's listening, your worst fight, you can remember the fight. You can't remember what it was about. Right? And so typically, like why do we remember the fight and not what it was about? Because it really wasn't that serious. When we all think about it in the big, picture of our marriage. And so you want to help them with this?
Yeah. So here's the thought. So first we're going to start with just 2 amazing things. Number 1, when I want you to tell John when you felt most loved by him.
A time in your marriage.
A time in your marriage you felt something he did, something he said that you felt most loved, and then vice versa.
I'm already getting emotional.
That's fine.
That's
This
okay.
is
I got
great.
tissue here.
Man, I'm so good.
No. Thank you.
I feel loved by John when?
So I think for me, I feel really loved by John when he cares for my mental health.
That's awesome.
Sorry.
No, it's good.
You're
Take your
so
time.
Sweet.
And so the times that I've just felt like so safe and so loved by him is when not only is he there for me when I'm already in the middle of spiraling or in a rough patch, but when he's asking me questions and seeing how I'm doing.
Yes.
Saying like, hey, how are you on this? You mentioned last week that you're struggling. Like, how is that now? Or when people come into our home and start saying things that he knows will kind of trigger me, I've heard him just shut those down.
Wow.
That's beautiful.
And I don't know I guess that's normal, but I just feel so so loved when he does that. Well, it's not normal that he does that. It's amazing. And so, yeah, I think I feel most loved by him when he's taking care of me. And yeah.
Thank you for
Thank you for sharing
Sorry.
that. So what do you feel? When do you feel most loved?
Yeah, I think for me, probably in the past like 3 weeks is probably when I've felt the most loved by her. I recently started a new job and I've just been really overwhelmed. And I think she's picked up on a lot of that and has gone so far out of her own way to make sure that she's like, look, I know you're stressed right now. I know you got a lot going on. I'm going to take care of literally everything I possibly can to free you up.
Wow.
So that way you can just do what you need to do in this time.
Yeah.
And I think for me going into this, there was almost a level of guilt of like, oh no, like I hope that like I don't want to let her down in this time. Like I don't want to seem like I'm not meeting her needs, and she's just completely gone, flip the script and gone, I don't care about that right now. I'm going to take care of you. And I think that has just like done something inside of me where I'm just like, yes, like that's my wife.
Yeah.
And just, I feel like the love I've felt for her has just really compounded over the past couple of weeks, just seeing the way that she has served and cared for me in this time, which has been really sweet.
I love hearing that. Thank you so much
Thanks
for
for
sharing
sharing
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're an emotional bunch. Sorry.
Yes, we all are. This is so good. So we never start any type of talk without sharing appreciations and affirming one another. Like,
I love that.
How does that make you feel? Like, you want to do this all the time now, huh?
Yeah.
Because that feels good. These tears you're experiencing aren't tears of joy. I mean, sadness, they're of joy. Like, you have, like, suddenly something in your heart just opened up, a compassion and an empathy towards your spouse, that they could say the wrong thing in the next conversation we're about to have, but your mind is going to go back to the positive feeling you're feeling right now.
I think what that is called reconfirming commitments, right? So like when couples, if you're listening right now and you're like, man, I have to have a hard conversation. When you start out with appreciations, you are reconfirming the commitment that you have to one another.
Yeah.
You are reconfirming what you notice good about one another. You are reconfirming your connection in the moment so that when you are talking about a fracture, that you go back to a solid foundation of what you have. It is obvious. This emotional expression that you both have right now, it's a connection of depth of love. Our love for one another is deep. Now, what are the things that aren't as deep as that connection that could eat away at the foundation if we don't deal with it correctly? And when we are fighting in our marriage, it is important that we start out with appreciations so that our spouse knows that this conversation is not to fight in our marriage. This conversation is to fight for our marriage.
And when your brain gets triggered to try to go back to childhood.
Yeah.
So you'll get triggered and think, oh my gosh, here's an argument. Your brain is all, see, I need you to be gentle with yourself, Annabelle, because all of us do it. All of us are going to default to what has been familiar, a familiar kind of love, a familiar experience. That's how God designed our brain. So what we're doing now as we work on our marriage and practice these tools of communication and how to fight fair, we're creating new neural pathways, new like ridges in our brain where this becomes our automatic, not our family of origin.
Right.
Our new familiar love is our spouse. It is the legacy, the beginning, what we are creating as a family unit, not someone else's junk.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think what is powerful about a moment like this is that when you expose what was unhealthy, you release what is healthy. When you expose what is unhealthy, you release what is healthy. And so we're going to help you walk through a very practical tool to really fight fair. And so like Irene and I, we're not in a fight right now. We haven't been in a fight for a little while. I can't remember the last fight or even what it was about. But if we were to fight, we would start off the conversation. we would have planned that, and we've talked about this in another episode, our 1 hour for 1 week conversation, and it would have started with appreciations. And it just would have went, I really appreciate you taking care of, all of the details in coming to EXO building. It really makes me feel loved.
And what I say back, and we're going to teach you this skill, is what I'm hearing you say is that you really appreciate when I take care of the details about our trip. It makes you feel loved. Did I get that?
Absolutely.
Is that everything? Do you have anything else?
Nothing else. Thank you for listening.
All right.
So that mirroring back, we're going to walk through all of these different steps. But what I would love for you right now to do is, John, we're going to, no, Annabelle, we're going to make it John. John, we want a level 2 issue that you might have talked to Annabelle about before in the past. You might not have talked to her about, and we've prepared you, that both of you, that it could be an issue that you have not talked about yet. So listeners, y'all get ready. I mean, get your popcorn, pull up a chair, and get ready, because we're about to do a really quick coaching session on how to fight fair.
And so before he gets started, these are the ground rules. Okay, one person talks, one person listens. You make eye contact and face each other while you're talking, not us. So while you're talking, you're going to be talking to Annabelle, facing her and looking her eye to eye. And then body language, let's just keep body language in check. Let's be non-judgmental towards one another with our body language, keeping it at neutral.
And then after you share, I'm going to be you, Irene is going to be Annabelle, and we're going to, if it's not the correct way, we're going to show you what the correct way is.
Oh, this is gold.
Isn't that great? Because
so
we're like twins.
Teaching him the skill?
Yep.
Okay.
Perfect.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Let's go.
I love that we're twins. That looks so good.
Twins.
All right. So I'm gonna go real fresh. This is something that's happened in the last
Here we
24
go.
hours. We've not addressed it. And
Okay, let's go.
I need y'all's help on this.
Okay.
'Cause I'm lost.
Let's go.
So, Annabelle, this started yesterday at the airport on the way here, when I tried to go through security, and they sent me back to the counter to re-get my ticket done because you didn't remember my birthday and you put down the wrong ticket information. And then we got to the airport, or we got to the hotel, and this morning, coming to film the podcast, ended up going to the wrong location, only to find out that the right location was across the street from where we were before. And I think for me, there was just this level of frustration of, like, I like getting details correct. And I think something that's really a strength of yours is being so easygoing and go with the flow. And for me, sometimes, like, I think the thing that frustrated me the most was not that you had made the mistake, but that you didn't care that you had made the mistake when I was like, hey, like, we're actually going back to where we just came from. And you're like, oh, that's awesome. I'm like, no, it's not. Like, I'm losing my mind over here. You're like, well, it's not a big deal. And I'm like, well, to me it is. And then in trying to bring it up, I know that there was some hurt on your end, and just kind of feeling inadequate maybe in the way that I brought it up, and being frustrated and kind of letting those emotions flow out. And so I just wanted to talk about that a little bit further with you.
So how would this normally play out? Like, what would happen right now? What are you feeling right now? Respond not to us. Respond back to John how you would normally respond.
I guess a few things that when we'd kind of talked about this earlier, I started to say the reason I got so upset that you were frustrated with me is kind of how you talked about earlier. I feel like I've been doing a lot for you the past few weeks, which I've loved. It hasn't been a hardship, but it's been a lot of sacrifice. And so I feel like out of all the things I've done the past few weeks, I made 2 mistakes, and seeing you get frustrated about those just really hurt, as if everything I did the past few weeks wasn't good enough. And these 2 mistakes just kind of undid all of that. And I also I'm not good at details, and I never will be good at details. I think you know that by now. And so when we were talking about it earlier in the car, I had said, like, hey, how about you handle details from now? And you said no. I said, okay, then I'm going to keep messing up. You can't get frustrated anymore. And you said, I will continue to get frustrated. So I guess.
And then the dance starts.
My issue is, my frustration is like, okay, I get this is something that frustrates you, but I've never been good at detail. I can try better, but I don't think I'm going to get any better. So if this is something that really frustrates you and is going to cause tension, then I need you to handle the details from now on.
Perfect. All right, now I'm John, and you're Annabelle.
Okay.
So first of all, you guys did pretty good.
You did pretty good.
You did pretty good.
We're talking like a B.
If
B
I was giving you a
plus?
scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the highest, I'll give you a 2.
Oh, that's
2.5.
2.5.
that's 40%.
And then I'll tell you why. Once you see what we do, you will see why.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Hey, Annabelle. I know earlier there was a little bit of tension. I acknowledge that. I saw that. When we were in the airport and then on the way to EXO, what I noticed is that there was some missteps. I noticed some missteps with the details, and I just want you to know, first of all, that I noticed that, and what I make up about that is that details really aren't important to you when there's a lot of pressure on. We have to do a podcast. We're doing something that we've never done before. I'm a little nervous, and I want you to know. And what it makes me feel a little bit unappreciated. It makes me feel maybe a little bit, unnoticed, like you don't care. And that's not an accusation, but can I ask you for a vulnerable request?
Sure.
That in the future, that because details are not like your thing, maybe we can sit down together and do the details so that both of us can be on our game.
Thank you so much for sharing. What I'm hearing you say is that, you noticed that at the airport I got your birthday wrong and it slowed things down. And I can see how that would be frustrating. And then details about the location of where we were supposed to go. I didn't get that either. And that caused you some frustration as well. And what you feel about that is that frustrated and maybe not cared for.
Yeah.
And what you're asking me for now is that we would maybe come together because you understand that it's not my skill set to be into the details, that when we come together, we can both be on the same page about the details and both of us sit down as a solution to see if we can do it together. And then both of us can have our minds at ease and there's no blame game. Did I get that?
You got that. And
Is there anything else?
Yeah, I just want you to know that, I'm not good at details either.
Okay.
And so it would be a strength that I would love for you to have, that I don't have, because I really feel insecure that this is an insecurity for me also. But maybe if that's both of us, we can sit down and make each other better in that area. So I appreciate you listening.
Thank you for sharing. So when I'm hearing you share like you did in the car, what I noticed is that there's a high level of frustration, and what I make up about that is that everything I have done over the past few weeks to help you in taking stress off so that you can be focused on your job, I feel like all of that goes out the window, and it's not enough. I'm never going to measure up to your standards of what you're looking for, and I feel pain about that.
Oh, I'm so sorry. What I hear you saying is that my response to a tension or tense moment wasn't the best, wasn't as healthy, because in that response, you feel like you're not enough. And the last thing I want you to do is feel like you're not enough based off of the history that you've given me, and not feeling as valued. And I want to never be the one to make you feel not enough. And I want to also thank you for all the things that you've done. I could probably do a better job noticing those things and affirming those things like I did with the affirmations, because this is really not a huge deal that could turn it into a huge deal if we didn't handle it in a healthy way. Is there more?
My vulnerable request is that we do come up with a solution that works for us both, since it's not my strength and not yours.
I agree. Thanks for sharing.
What did you notice that the differences, if you could just highlight them like that.
Yeah, I think the differences I noticed in the way that you all were talking was everything was headed in a direction and had purpose. Whereas I think going back to my initial conversation, everything was more of just an emotional dump. And it's like, here's all of my problems, deal with them. Mm-hmm. And there's not much purpose or direction, or it's not really going in a productive way. And so making sure that I think the way that you guys handled that was amazing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Annabelle, what'd you feel?
Did you notice anything in particular that stuck out to you?
I liked how you guys came up with an action step with that. So it isn't just like, oh, it's okay, and forget it and move on. It's like, okay, so what are we going to do now? Because this is a situation that has happened quite a few times before, so it's probably going to happen again.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so how are we going to handle this next time or prevent it from happening next time?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Very good.
I think one of the things that we have learned in our relationship, and if you're listening, I want you to really hear this. The point of a fight is a purpose.
Yeah.
It's to get better. If you are about to approach a conversation without the goal of both parties getting better, it's not time to have the conversation, because it's an emotional dump where our emotions are to figure something out. When you feel anger, it's because there's an unmet expectation. The goal would be to communicate the expectation, not the anger.
Not the anger.
But what we want to do is communicate the emotion and not what's supposed to come from the emotion, because we feel inadequate, because we feel trapped, because we feel like we don't have the words, because Pastor or Jimmy and Irene aren't there, right? Like, so
Yeah, and so we had this tool that we taught in a previous episode called the talking boundary. And when you use the talking boundary, we literally, to practice this, had it on a card in our wallets. So if I had to make a phone call to Jimmy and say, confront him about something in love, I could take out my card and fill in the blank. So, the way we did it, and, we have it on a screen for you guys, so you guys will be able to do this having the same conversation, maybe a different issue where you're using the talking boundary. So the first thing you're doing is saying what you noticed.
the facts.
The observation. This makes it non-accusatory. I observed what. So this is the antecedent. This is what comes before what you feel about it. So what did you notice? I noticed we made some errors.
Not what someone did,
Yes.
but the result.
The result.
It's the fact.
Yeah.
It's the reality. The reality that I noticed
The birthday was wrong.
The birthday was wrong. I noticed your tone was elevated. I noticed it's not accusatory. It's just what you noticed.
It's what you noticed. And then you associate a feeling with it. No, actually, so what you notice and then what you made up about it. What you're doing is taking ownership. I noticed you forgot my birthday and what I made up about that. So you're owning the script that you decided to have, the belief system that you chose. You chose it because of what you noticed. And so what you're doing is you're checking in with yourself and the person as you're saying this out loud. Wow. You're saying, I noticed that you forgot my birthday. And what I made up about that is that you don't care about details. And then what I felt.
Then
comes
what
the
I felt
feeling.
about it.
Yep.
And that's the 8 core emotions, which will be in the show notes. And you guys are going to study your 8 core emotions.
And practice them.
What I made up about that. Now, what I feel about that is what? I feel fear that we're never going to get good at this.
Pain.
I feel pain that you would think I did this on purpose. I feel now you've taken it away from what they did and you put it on what you feel about what you noticed. When Irene said what she felt, not enough. I didn't go on what happened. My job as her husband is to care for the history of why she feels not enough. The last thing I want to do is contribute more to that history.
Yep.
I want to contribute to the healing.
And you know what? When he sees me, now that he understands how I feel, he sees that and he's empathizing with it and modifying his behavior Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So now when you hear his heart and that he feels what you, I'm just going to pick, I didn't hear you use any emotions, but I'm going to pick words. Like you felt frustration, maybe anger.
That's emotion.
Okay. Yeah. But I'm deciding for you.
Yeah. No,
And
I understand.
so then you can, maybe you don't want, I don't want you to feel, how can I help be part of the solution so you don't have to feel that? That's you caring for that.
Okay.
You're not, maybe can't fix it because some of it is his to own.
Yeah.
Like he's got to manage his expectations of you. If that's not your primary, gift, he has to manage his own expectations realistically about you. And then you guys also have a solution to come to for the problem. So we go from feeling what I feel about it. So now I can care for it differently because I'm coming into your world. When I mirror back to you, you feel heard. Like I'm empathizing. Like now I feel moved, compassion. Compassionate empathy is what we really want in our marriages. Like I went into your world, I felt it. And now I'm moved just like Jesus did to love you in a way that you need to be loved to heal.
So like what I kept doing is saying, so what I hear you saying.
Yeah.
And that is the exact words of what the person is saying. Because a lot of times with someone who processes out loud, that's not what they meant. Right? So I had to become okay with Irene saying it until what I'm telling her back of what I just heard her saying was the right thing.
Yeah.
And at first, this frustrated me. Just say what you mean.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm like,
But
she's
it
like,
takes
no.
me a minute.
But it takes time. So I want to let you guys know what you did well. Also, you love one another. 100%. There was, as frustrated as that moment could have been and what your face looked like when you walked in here, there's empathy in there that there's care for one another. So don't beat yourselves up because you're going to get this wrong. We're not going to, on this show, go through, on this episode, we'll do another episode at another time to show, later on how well you guys are doing with this now. But there's not a lot to fix here. One of the things that you said that there was a purpose is the vulnerable request. Now, me being a lot like you, I'll tell you, if this was our issue, I already feel not enough because I'm not as smart as Irene, because I have ADD, because I forget everything. And so I count on her for details. And so when we don't have details, it makes me as a man feel inadequate.
And anxious.
And now my go-to is anger. Because if I go to anger, then I ain't got to touch that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
It has everything to do with me. So the vulnerable request would be, can we do this because I actually feel inadequate too?
Wow.
And now she's caring for you rather than checking stuff off a list for you. She will remember that more than your license.
Can I also just put a disclaimer? I put my birthday as his birthday. I didn't forget his birthday. I just said that we had the same one. I'm not that terrible.
Human error.
Yeah, that would have been bad. Yeah, I was gonna
Human error. You were so funny. All good. But do you see that how like something can, like the whole mood of something can change if you understand the feeling behind it and you're looking for a purpose, which is the vulnerable request? Because in that vulnerable request is the solution. So what is I didn't hear a vulnerable request from you except you made a deciding statement. You made what is the word? Not an ultimatum.
That was good. A deciding statement.
Deciding statement. You were like, you do it.
Yeah.
Moving forward. Fine, I'm not going to do it. So if that isn't the most, so that isn't the most healthy way to handle a disagreement. So if he came with a complaint, no solution. You came with a complaint in his tone. Now we're coming up with a solution. But what would you ask him? What's your vulnerable request? Do you have one in terms of his tone or how he communicates or in that moment, what he could do better for you?
Yeah, I guess my vulnerable request would be that you would kind of, say your frustrations, but also add in affirmations before that, kind of what we said before, of acknowledge that I have been doing other things well, but this one thing or two things was something that caused a lot of frustration.
It's great. And so you would end that by saying, what I hear you saying. Now do that.
So what I hear you saying is that in the future, you would prefer for me to acknowledge all of the incredible things that I see you doing and not just pointing out the flaws, however few they may be.
Yeah.
Did I get that?
Did I get that?
Yeah.
This is beautiful. This is beautiful. If you are listening or tuning in, this is how you have a good fight. I'm going to tell you one of the things that we talked about in another episode, but we didn't have time to really dive into. Both of you were listening to understand, not to respond.
100%.
A key part of having a good fight is listening to understand. Now, we set you up. Irene said, tell us about your history. Tell us about, because you have that, you're trying to figure out, am I a part of that? Am I a part of the history, or am I a part of healing it? And both of you, when you put your needs, the other person's needs before how you feel, you will do, I'm telling you right times, 9 times out of 10, your fights will be a good fight, not a bad fight. There are show notes that give you talking boundaries, that teach you how to mirror. What else?
Yes, to teach you how to empathize, teach you how to appreciate one another and have hard conversations. And so we want you to practice these tools. You be gentle with yourself. Be gentle with yourself. You're not going to do it right every time. You're not going to be perfect. You're going to mess up all along the way. But here's the deal. The more we do it, the better we get at it. And we lessen the amount. We have more good arguments than we do bad ones. And so God bless you guys. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for coming in, being vulnerable with the audience. You've helped so many people today just by being real and authentic. So thank you.
Can y'all kiss or touch or just say you love each other?
So
just a peck. Just here, I'll give you one too. Come on. I love you. There we go. Come on, PDA to the world.
Let's go.
2 = 1. Thank you so much. We are figuring out how to have a good fight. Equally crazy, equally committed, trying to build marriages of love, laughter, and longevity. And Irene, I love that we get to do this together. Thanks to XO Marriage. Thanks to Pastor Jimmy and Karen, Brent and Stephanie. This is absolutely awesome. We count it as an honor that we get to come alongside you and your spouse for a marriage made one. We'll see you next time. We want you to tune in to XO Marriage, everything XO Marriage. They can go to our website. Guess what? They can sign up for Mastering Marriage.
Yes.
Where they get 2
coaching calls a month.
Wow.
An hour. You can sit down with your spouse and literally dive into just tools and get coached by Dave and Ashley Willis and Lynette and Sean Reed, and you and I do it as well. And we're all kinds of marriage educators who are going to help enhance your marriage, and just the tools that we hear about when we're listening to a message. At a conference, somebody speaks, we're listening to a podcast, but to actually get live on a Zoom and practice and hear just it broken down into smaller incremental pieces that we can digest.
You can go to www.xomarriage.com to sign up.